Hello and welcome to Trend Maker or TR3ND Maker. My name is Alex, and in this video I hope to help you smash that first layer. So in this video, this one in particular is mostly about adjusting the printer, getting it set to spec, get everything aligned properly, everything tight as it should be. This is super important for that first layer, and often this is a very overlooked aspect of 3D printing, and I've helped many people early on with this sort of getting that first layer down and why it's not sticking. And my first question to all of them is always, is this tight? How's the bed? Is it loose? And I always get, oh no, it's good. No, it's good. No problem. No, we're all set. Let's go. Yeah, no, I'm ready. I just can't get it. It's something in the settings. It's something in this. And after a little bit of working with something or sending some photos or doing a Skype or something of that nature or just being on the phone, inevitably the bed is loose, the x-axis is loose, something's not aligned properly, and it's creating inconsistency. So even though they're leveling the bed properly, things are moving. So as the carriage is moving back and forth and the axis is moving, something's popping out of alignment, and then now we're a millimeter off or half a millimeter off, and it's just printing in error, or it's grinding into the print, and then that'll pop it right off. So this is really overlooked, which is why I wanted to spend some time on this aspect. The next video will be the specifics of leveling the bed, and several techniques and a couple little tips and tricks that I have learned over the years to sort of enhance your ability to get a little more bite to the bed, especially as a beginner and in those first prints, because nothing is more frustrating than starting a print and it just fails after like halfway. And you know, we can clean up stuff later, but the key is you got to get stuff to stick, and then you can start backing down some of these extra settings and some of these adjustments. Okay, anyways, so let's get at it. It's going to be a little long. I would recommend that you watch this video in its entirety. It's going to be about an hour, maybe longer in length. Watch the entire video, get a gist of what we're going to do. Clear your schedule, get yourself in a good frame of mind, get a refreshment for yourself. Have the kids be sure they're occupied watching a movie or something like that. Have all your tools ready. Have good lighting, and just then come at it and with a nice clear mind. And it's not difficult, but it is time consuming, and it would it'd be in your best interest to not be in a position where you're feeling hurried or rushed. We do want to get this pretty much perfect. That's it, so let's go. So what do we need to do here first? First thing, we're going to need some tools. You're going to need a towel or a soft cloth, something to protect the printer if you're tipping it on its side. We're going to need some 90-degree angled tools here, squares, and I prefer this metal one. I think it's a little more accurate than this one. Not that this is not straight, but it's just easier, I think, with the metal. We're going to need probably a flashlight so we can get in nice and close with some light, see what we're doing. We're going to need all the little tools that probably came with your printer. These are the wrenches for the Ecocentric Nuts, and maybe the hot end, a couple other little things here. So this, possibly a crescent wrench if you don't have one, maybe two. We're going to need all of the Allen wrenches that came with your printer, and maybe more. And what else? Oh, we're going to need some rulers. So I have a couple different sizes here. You don't need really one of these, but I like actually having both. Metric. Definitely get the metric if you can, or one that has inches and metric. The millimeter marks, usually on a metal ruler, or a little more accurate, and it will help you, especially in these little micro adjustments, especially when we're doing like the x-axis here. So yeah. All right, and what else? Okay, so let's start this off. Move things in that way. On my printer, I actually have a direct drive set up, so I have some of this I can't disconnect. But first things first. Undo the power. No power going to your printer. Okay, that's very important. We do not want power connected to this printer. I've actually unplugged on the other side as well, but I just want to make that clear. Unplug this. All right. Second thing is, if you're going to tip this over, we're probably going to need to undo a few of these sensors and steppers, and I think that should get me okay here for what I need to do. All right, and then what else? Yeah, that should be good. Okay, so what we're going to do now, first thing, most important, we have to be sure that this frame is perfectly perpendicular to these bars here. Okay, so we need a perfect T. Can't even be canted a little bit. If you have something canted a little bit, what will happen is, as your print is coming up, it's actually going to be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It's going to actually be tilted. So we need to be sure that this is straight. It also needs to be nice and snug. Now, this is a TiVo Tornado, very similar to the CR10, very similar to the Ender series. There's a whole bunch of printers basically with the same configuration, and most of what I'm going to discuss here will carry over to your style of printer. The brackets may be a little different. Some of the fittings may be a little different, but for the most part, it's all the same. Okay, here we go. All right, so we need to be sure this is straight and tight. Now, I know this one is, but I'm going to show you the process of double checking that. First thing, you want to be sure to get that little wiggle there. Mine is super tight. We're just going to take it, we're going to tilt, have that cloth there, and we just want to tilt it a little bit, and we're going to check the Allen's on this side. I think this is the right side. Yep, and just be sure little, actually that one actually is just a tiny bit of snug. Oh, very important, might want to just free up. If you've got a little T-bracket right here, we want to undo those, just loosen, you don't have to go all the way, just slightly loosen it up. We're going to get to all this and fine adjusting this stuff later. But I'm just basically just taking the tension off. Alright. Okay, nice and snug. Perfect. And we'll do the same down here. Let me undo the other side here. Now I just like to just slightly loosen these, especially if you know your T-nuts inside here are aligned properly. Okay, there we go. That'll just be sure we can get a nice tight seal here. All right. I mean, I'm slightly. These are snug. So what do you want to do here on tension? When you're tightening these, you're going to feel a natural stopping point of snugness. So you're going to tighten, and it's going to be loose. It's going to be loose. It's going to snug, and there's going to be just a little bit of play after this, a little bit, and then after it's snug and it feels tight, just give it a tiny, maybe an eighth of a turn, just a little bit more. That should ensure that you're nice and snug. Okay. Now, next thing we're going to work on is these T-fittings. Now, don't worry about these here. They're not as important right now, and ultimately, we will be adjusting the height of the end stop here a little later anyway, so this part doesn't matter. But we want to get this part on this side, where we have the end stop, we want to get this nice and snug. So what I like to do is, you can see this is lightly loose. Be sure, I try to get it nice and straight. You can feel it on the frame. All right, snug, and then snug it down. And same thing, you're going to feel it get tight, and then just a little nudge more. Don't force it. Don't strip it. It's not necessary. But nice and snug. You shouldn't need to put a lot of pressure on here. Snug, and just a tiny, tiny bit more. All right. All right, and then the same thing over here. On this side, we don't need this anymore. Okay, and then I can see, and you can feel on this side, I'm going to try to get my other camera in here. All right, you should feel here that this actually is, if you run your fingers down the edge here, you'll feel that the distance, that it just lines up perfectly with the 2040 extrusion here, and which that is. That's perfect. So we're just going to go ahead and lightly snug that down. Again, same situation. We're going to put this in tight, and then just a tiny bit more. Same here. Going to go snug, so it's tight, and then just a little bit more. That's it, normal tension, and then just a little bit more. You can see this one was loose. Actually, yeah, tight, and then just a little bit more. Perfect. Okay. All right. All right. Now, so you can feel that's nice and snug, nice and tight. Okay, we're good to go there. All right. Now that we have the frame square, straight, and tight, we're going to go on to the bed carriage. Now, this is an often overlooked aspect of a 3D printer, and it majorly affects the first layer. If these Ecocentric nuts on this bed are not adjusted properly, you'll either be too tight and you're binding, or if more commonly, they're loose. What'll happen is the weight of the carriage will sort of hold it down, and it actually feels like it's fine. But if you give a little wiggle or a toggle, you'll start to realize that actually the wheels are not, the tension isn't proper on those Ecocentric nuts, and it'll flop around. So when you're leveling it, it seems great, but once it starts under load, moving and jerking back and forth nice and fast to lay the print down, what happens is the bed will move or shift, and now you're a millimeter off or 2 millimeters off, and you're wondering why you're going to fail your print. All right, so take your time on this. Be sure it's done right. It should be snug, but have nice movement. It shouldn't be binding. It should be nice and easy, but if you give it a little wiggle, it should be nice and secure. The next thing we want to do is we want to work on the y-axis. All right, so we have Z is up and down, we have X is side to side, and Y is back and forth. All right, and as you can see, I loosened this up. Just as a little note, I bought this printer secondhand from a gentleman who had it, and he said he had a couple prints out of it. He showed me a few of them. They were okay, and he was frustrated he couldn't get the layers to stick. He was having problems, eventually got frustrated. Actually, I was on the phone with him for like an hour trying to sort of help him through it. Even though he was selling it, I don't know why, I went into like helpful mode. And he basically just said that, look, it's taking up a lot of room in his room. He wanted to get into it. He didn't realize it was going to be as difficult as it was, which it is and it isn't. It is time consuming. It takes time to learn. And he wanted to sell it. So I ended up getting this printer for $200, which was pretty good. And I looked at it, and everything looked relatively okay. I got it home, and the bed was literally doing this. This axis here, this was all just flopping around. Honestly, I don't know how he was able to print anything. But somehow he managed. He must have been using rafts or something. I'm not really sure. But this was just a disaster. I spent about 20 minutes straightening everything out, hit my first print, and it was beautiful. So was really happy. Over time, I've done a few little upgrades, like the direct drive system here, and I added some brackets and braces and some little things. Anyways, let's get back to it. Okay, so let's get this fixed. All right, so right now, first thing we got to do is we're going to need to raise up the Z-axis. So you can just, with no power, you can just turn this slowly. You don't want to go too fast because you can actually send some current back through here and potentially spike this. So we don't want to do that. So just nice and easy, should be fine. We want to get that up just to make some more room for us to work here. Okay, perfect. All right, and then we're going to loosen up our bed here. It's best to try to do these in twos. So, front to back, side to side, however you want to do it, but do it one set at a time, because you don't want three taking the weight, especially on a tornado, because this is glass. That might actually put a little twist in it, and it could create a crack and break it. So we want to be careful of that. So, but front, going this series or that series, should be fine. All right. And you probably noticed you probably have one of these. You may need to put your Allen key in here to do this. I don't. I actually put a little rubber washers in here, which holds it nicely, so I don't have to deal with that. You may also be doing this with just the factory installed T-nut there, and if it is, I feel sorry for you, because they're a real pain to adjust. It's going to be one of the first prints I'm going to recommend you doing. Oh, little tip here: if you take the bed and the plate underneath and you pinch them a little bit, let's see if I can get a video of that. So quick little sit down, try to edit this in. How can I do this? You know what? Perfect use of a T-square. All right. Okay. What we can do is just take a little pinch here, and then look, these will just spin right off. Keep that tension on. Do the same thing on the other side. Just boom. All right. So now this is free. All right, and then we're going to same thing. I can actually do this from here, I'm pretty sure. Just drop it. Now that you only have one, you're probably okay. I don't think you need to worry too much. All right, and then let's raise this just a little bit more here. That should be fine. All right. And then bring our towel back. And what we're going to do is we're going to lift this up. Springs are going to fly. Everything's going to drop. And we're going to very carefully, because again, this is glass, lay it down so it doesn't get damaged. All right. Now, this is your... Get rid of these. Okay. And again, one of your first prints, you've got to make these. This is like a lifesaver for 3D printing. These little nuts are impossible to adjust and reach your hand under there. These are just little bed leveling knobs. I actually I got this off of Thingiverse. It wasn't designed for this particular printer, the actual T-nut there, and I just oversized it and changed it, merged it in there, and actually this worked out really great. I like the teeth on here. I actually had a couple of these others. This one sort of has like a tire tread. I made, this is one for the my S5. But I really like this. If you want the file for this, I don't think I've ever uploaded it on Thingiverse, but if you want to, just send me a message or comment and I'll upload that for you. Okay, now we have the plate here, and you'll notice it's all messed up. And we have 6 nuts here. Now, on this side, you'll notice there's just a straight washer in between the plate. Let me get a close-up video of that. I'm going to take a photo again. Alright, so first thing we want to do is we want to be sure that these on this particular side are tight. Alright, so for this, really, we can probably just put your finger under here and use your wrench. And these are pretty tight. Using your Allen key on the other side will help hold it. It may be tricky. You may have better luck putting it on the side. I can actually get in here and do this without it. Alright, so snug these up. Okay, so now we have this side, which is perfectly straight, and that's great. So now we know that's great, but these are all messed up. Now these are what they call ecocentric nuts. All right, I wanted to just add a little note about ecocentric nuts because there does seem to be some confusion sometimes from beginners on what they are. So an ecocentric nut is basically a nut, but instead of the hole for the bolt going through the center, it's actually offset to one of the sides. So what happens is when you actually turn that ecocentric nut, it no longer just spins in a circle, it actually arcs. So when you have that connected to one of your rollers or wheels against the extrusion, what it'll do is it'll actually bring the wheel closer and snug it up against the aluminum extrusion or the rails. And obviously if you turn the other direction, what will happen is you'll find that it's loose and then the wheel's not actually connected. So we actually want to get a nice balance here. We want tension on this wheel, or that ecocentric tension on the wheel, but we don't want it to bind the movement of the wheel. And if you compress these too much, when you try to move the bed, you'll actually feel that it's all of a sudden, it feels like there's a brake on. Something, it's just causing it, or sometimes if it's really too tight, you'll feel like almost a thumping, it'll thump. So we want to get that nice balance. So I usually tighten it till it's secure and I feel it binding and creating a little tension, and then I back it off just a little bit, and usually that's a nice balance. But that's the way an ecocentric nut works. Also, it's really important that when you start, you want both ends of the actual nut, the ecocentric nut will be sort of in the middle here. You want to be sure they're nice and snug and secure, because if this is loose, it'll actually angle off, so that wheel will actually still have a little bit of play because the underlying bolt going through it is not completely snug. So snug that first, just enough that you'll be able to, with the wrench that usually comes with the printer, you'll be able to turn it. It should be snug to turn, but you'll be able to do it. Yeah, just a quick little note about that, and all right, continue. You can see here this is quite loose. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the middle one, and it's important that it is snug to start with. If these are loose, it's not going to help you much. So let's just be sure that the actual, I'm using my finger on the other side, and that's usually enough. So it's snug, and we don't want it super tight, but snug. Then we're going to grab our wrench here, and that is for the ecocentric nuts. We're going to get in here, and I'm going to do this by feel. So you're just going to turn it slightly until you can feel it tightening up. Again, we're just getting the center one, but I can still feel there's a lot of play side to side. can feel the tension now. Just pushing that around. That's feeling pretty good. There. Now, that center part is snug. Now, what we want to do here, how tight should we make it? I'm rolling this back and forth. You should, when you're doing this, you should not feel it going boom, 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 boom. You shouldn't feel like it's over compressing the urethane wheel. What it'll do then is you'll sort of get like, you'll feel like it's dragging. You want it so it slides evenly and smoothly, but it's snug. Now, actually, this feels perfect. All right, now let's work on one of these others. Again, let's be sure this is snug. Okay, because if this is a little loose, it can actually tilt, and tightening this, it's not tight. We need to be sure that this is going to stay nice and 90 degrees and square. Now this is we're going to notice a big difference here when I do this one. Okay. Not yet. There, I can start to feel it tighten up. Almost. There we go. Yeah, now it already feels good. We don't even have this one done. And I can already double check. It's nice and smooth. Okay, maybe just take it back a little. I'll take this one back just a hair. Just to be... Okay. Oh yeah, it feels really good. Alright, and then the last one. Alright, same deal. See, I'm almost barely going to notice this difference on this one. So on this one, I'm going to try to go, I'm turning. I'm going to go till it's tight, till I actually feel that resistance. Yeah, feels good. You'll feel it. You'll actually feel if you go a little too tight, you'll start feeling the resistance. Like it'll actually be harder to go back and forth. And you want to back it down off that. There we go. Actually, take it back just a little bit. There we go. Alright. So look at that. Oh yeah, that feels fantastic. Okay. So then, next, let's put this back. Now, something I highly recommend, especially on the CR10 series, is this tension, heat plate tension piece here. What it does is it takes the tension off the welds here, and it takes the tension off of stressing the wires here, kinking the wires. Potentially could be a problem. So that's just off a thing of ours. All right, come back in here. Now, I usually just start with getting it kind of in place here. Not worrying about the washers just yet. And again, same thing. Get the front one in. Just get it close. All right, we're going to start with the back. You're going to take your springs. Okay, and get one in. And then I'll get the second one here. Slide it up underneath. All right, we're good. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. Okay. And number 3. And you'll see the screws come up a little. That makes it easier, actually. And there. All right. Now. All right, look how high it's sitting. All right, then we're going to take our bed leveling knobs and just, they should go in this configuration. So we're leaving a little air gap there, so it should be hanging down. And we're just going to get these on. You don't need to tighten them. Just go till they stop. I mean, in the sense that when I spin them on, just spin till they stop. Maybe just a couple turns more. All right, same thing over here. A couple extra turns. Nothing, no tension really. Almost nothing. Okay. All right, and even without it being tight, look how much better this is. And we're going to tighten this down more, so we'll free up all this. This is actually the springs sort of moving around. We'll take care of that later. Now we have the frame square and tight. We have the bed carriage adjusted properly, and it's nice and snug. Now we're going to work on the x-axis. Now, this is actually really important for the movement of the printer and having really nice clean prints, and also for the leveling of the bed. So on the side where the stepper is and the Z-rod, this piece right here actually controls the entire x-axis arm where the extruder is moving. And if this is not adjusted properly and tight, you're actually going to get this movement on the other side. It's going to sway. If it's loose, or if it's not tightened right, you're going to get this sort of wobbling, and it's going to be inconsistent, and when you level the bed, it's going to seem fine, and then after the bed is moving around and you're printing, this is going to move, and you may actually see a couple millimeters difference in the height of the extruder to the bed, and this will of course cause prints to fail. So, or maybe even digging into the print as it's printing, and that little nozzle digging in there a few times might actually just shoot your print right off. So, and you'll get a big spaghetti monster. All right, so it's really important that we get the side with the Z-rod adjusted properly first. Let's get those Ecocentric nuts adjusted. This is nice and secure. Then we're going to work on getting the arm perfectly parallel to the actual frame, not the bed. We're going to get this adjusted to the frame, okay? And then we're going to adjust the Ecocentric nuts on this side and get this nice and secure. And if this is done properly, these should actually move synchronously like this. It should just move easy. You don't want this going up and then this falling slow, or this coming down and vice versa. This should move together. And when done properly, there's going to be almost no movement on the other side. That's one of the ways you know that this is done right. This is, by the way, probably the trickiest aspect, and in fact in this video you'll see that I go through this procedure of taking the top off and go through this a couple times to get it perfectly. And I do encourage you to, this is something you do not want to skimp on. If you're thinking it's good enough, it probably isn't, okay? So if you think it's good enough, oh, it's good enough, no, it's probably not. You want this perfect, because if this is off skew, even by 1 millimeter, then every print you make, because now you're going to have to take the bed and level it, it's going to have to be off skew by 1 millimeter. You're basically, every print you have is actually going to have a lean, and the top and the bottom are going to be tilted a little bit, and depending on how much the bed is off. Now, maybe you don't care, but I would. I like my prints to be nice and square and secure. All right, so that's it. This is the trickiest part. Take your time on this. Get it right. Pat yourself on the back. If you do this right, you won't have to do this again for a really, really, really long time. So that's one thing to look forward to. Now we need to get the Z-axis perfectly parallel and snugged. So we need to start this process. First of all, we're going to probably want to remove the Z-rod here. And also then we're going to work on being sure that the wheels on this side are snug, and the Ecocentric nut, which is here, we're going to be sure that that's nice and tight, because we don't want any wobble in this portion. This is going to create this is the only thing creating the alignment for the arm going across the other side. This is sort of just riding up and down. It doesn't really do much other than just stabilize it from swinging back and forth. But this is the most important part. So let's get this right. This will, once we get this perfectly aligned, this will aid in keeping it straight, because this is going to put tension on the 2 rollers along this edge, and that'll just locked in. That'll keep it nice and straight, so you don't really need a dual Z-axis. It's nice to have. Sometimes I think it's actually more of a pain with it, because you can't just raise and lower your bed manually, because you throw it all out of whack. But anyways, beside the point. Let's see. Let's go. All right. Before we go ahead and tighten up the Ecocentric nuts on the X-axis assembly and bracket, let's go ahead and loosen the Z-rod coupler here. And that way, that'll allow us some freedom to raise and lower the bed as necessary. Basically, you just want it to be able to be free like this. So when we're adjusting the wheels, we'll know we're getting a good tension to be able to move the carriage up and down freely and feel if there's any restrictions. Let's work on tightening these here, and we're going to need our wrench. These are probably snug, but let me just confirm. We're going to start off with the outer wheels. Again, mine were a little loose, so use. Okay, and you can actually use your wrench that came with your printer. And I'm going to video this so you can see it. Okay, we're going to tighten these. Snug. Okay, we may have to get an Allen on the back side there, which is what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to put an Allen screw on the back side here, and then I will tighten that one again. I'll come back. Alright, so this is just going to keep it from spinning. Tighten here. Nice and steep. Actually, I feel smoother already. Alright. See, I've already loosened it. Okay, now we're going to do this Ecocentric nut here. Now, I might be able to adjust it from here, but we want to get this nut. Again, this was loose. Okay, nice and tight. You want it snug. This one, because of the Ecocentric nut, you want it snug, but not super tight. Alright, now, I remove the rod, or at least disconnect it, so I can feel the tension. And we'll just give this a little, again, this is that Ecocentric nut that will loosen. See how it's moving? Not good. Okay, gotta go the other way. One good way to work this out is if you hold the wheel. If you can roll, you can roll it back and forth, and it's not sliding. That's actually a good indicator that you're pretty good. And then of course you can just go for smoothness. There should be no boom boom boom. It shouldn't go boom 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 boom. That means it shouldn't be thumping. It should go nice and smooth, but snug. It's tight. There's no play here. Nice and tight. That's perfect. And then I can give this just a little snugger now. I feel a little resistance because tightening that little bit on the back side, I actually feel like that just changed it a bit. So we're just going to back it down just a little bit. There we go. Oh, there it's perfectly smooth. That feels great. No play. Perfect. All right, back into the little holder there, into the coupler. All right, so we know that this bracket is perfect to the frame. Again, we have the upper piece back is on, so we know that this is all square. We know this is square. Now, this is the trickiest part, and I've loosened mine up, and that's the holes here, and there's one that you can come in from behind. There's actually a drilled out hole, at least on the Tornado here. So, right there. Now, we're going to try to just get this one. Let's get that height right. Just going to set this to a measurement. Okay. Set this to 17. Sounds good to me. Okay, we're at 17 there. Let's see what we are over here. Again, try not to disturb or shake it up. I'm way off. I'm off 2 millimeters. So this needs to stay still, and this needs to come down. So I'm going to push this down just a little bit. Remember, I have it slightly loose. See how it moved? That's real close right there. Let's confirm that we're still 17 over on this side. Okay, just need to raise it a bit. 17. How are we over here? Oh, we're dead on. Okay, it's perfect. Now I've got this straight. Now, all I did here, these two were loose. The two inside ones are loose. So they're just sort of sitting there. This one, inside here, is tight, but not too tight. Just enough that I had a little bit of movement. This one was pretty much loose. So we're going to now lock this one down. And hopefully that'll hold the position. And I can feel that this edge right here is good. Okay, I think perfect there. Let's measure again. Getting it back to 17. Every time you disturb it, you could be upsetting the position. Okay. Just a little bit off. Just going to try and give us a little. Oh, I felt the pop just a little bit. Try that again. 17. Too low. Yeah, this is, like I said, this is the trickiest part of this project, is this phase right here. So loosen this a little bit. This is going to take a little trial and error, but 17. Okay, I'm going to come up. 70. All right, we got it. Now, let's tighten this up again. Okay, I think that's right. Let's confirm. Bingo. All right. Now, I'm going to try not to shake this up too much. We got to take the top off. Okay, I've already loosened these prior. Because what we want to do is we want to come in there and get that back T-nut tightened in. And unfortunately, we cannot drill. We cannot tighten it through the aluminum extrusion. Alright, this can come up. Just take it up with the T-rod, doesn't really matter. Okay. Try not to disturb this too much here. Keep it nice and steady. We're going to come in through the back here. Snug it. Actually going to get this little in here. I think I get a little more leverage on it. Get it in all the way. You do not want to strip these, by the way. Snug. Okay, I'm good there. And so put this back. And we should be able to. Okay. And let's put this back on because this is portion. Just make sure my washer's in place. There is a little cutout for the washers, so you can just get those in place. They won't slide around. Having fun yet? All right. Okay, you don't have to go rank this down, but just get it snug for right now. Get your alignment by pushing. Be sure that this is flush here on this side. Okay, again, let's confirm this measurement now that we've retightened that down. We should be good. But it could get out, it can move, so we are messing with it. Alright, here we go. Let's go back to 17. Right at 17. Back up on this side. Oh, it's perfect. Alright, excellent. Okay. Now, this is much easier on this side because we can actually just get to the fittings. Alright, so now what we want to do is, again, these are locked. This is the Ecocentric nut on the side. So it's riding on this. So we want to get this nice and straight. So we want to be sure these are loose, which they should already be, which they are. Loose, perfect. Let's tighten these down. And you can put the wrench on this side to secure it. And let's just snug it. Good. Again, snug, not ranking down. Okay? So we know that's good. Now here's a little thing. If you can sort of feel, you should be able to almost turn the wheel and feel it move. Like over here, if I turn this, let me take this rod out. Okay, now, is there any movement here? Now, same situation. So you can turn this. I can spin this wheel pretty freely. It's tight, but let's just go ahead and give that, snug this part first. Oh, that's loose. So, and you can't, it actually did. Alright. You may have to take this bracket off to get in to get to the other side to lock this down. So you have to keep that in mind. This, I'm kind of lucky to sometimes just do a quick turn sometimes. It'll keep it from. No, I think I probably should show you doing that. Okay. Well, let's do that. Let's go ahead and take that off. Let's show you how to do this in case you're in that position. Get this out of the way. All right. And when we need to take the top bar off. Okay, set it aside. Alright, we're going to pull this off again. Watch your wires. Okay. And we're going to take this completely off so that we can be sure that we get this fitting here tight. So do that. Just let's see here, I'm actually pretty loose already. There, good. That just comes right out. So in case you didn't know, these come forward. The way these T-nuts work, the way the T-nuts work, is you can slide them into the slot this way, and when you tighten, they turn inside, and they'll turn to a locking position. So you'll put it in, you can pop it into the slot this way. When you tighten, it turns, it'll stop, and then it'll grab the rail and snug it down. What you don't want is you don't want it to be at a 45-degree angle like this, because what it'll actually do is it'll actually create a little dent in the. It'll create a dent, and you do not want that. All right. So here we go. All right, so this one right here is the inner wheel is one we're going to snug up. Got a wrench, and we're just going to tighten here. And we're just doing this prior to the, there. Yeah, that feels great. All right, much better. All right, and you'll see there's actually a little cutout notch right here, and that's going to go right in there like so. And the T-nuts, you want to turn them sideways, so they'll drop in. Okay, and then we can come back on. There we go. Okay, we're going to get this in a second. Let's get this back on first. Nice and tight. Alright, now let's put the Z-rod back in to get our height right. Doesn't have to be perfectly tight, we're just trying to get it off the cloth here so it's suspended on its own. And I can already see that there's like this, I mean this right here almost has no movement. Look at that. It's perfect. I mean look at that. It's not moving at all. So that's a really good sign that we're real close here. Okay. So we got our alignment. This is still loose, as you can see. I'm going to try to get it right in the... Get it in the... There's an upward and a middle. Let's try to get it about the middle. Let's tighten this one down. And you almost can feel the T-nut locking into place. So you can almost feel it as in the slot. As you tighten, you can almost feel it as you're turning it go, and that would be good. And sometimes you can see it. If you're having a little trouble, sometimes you can take a Allen key, a smaller one, and sort of just, as you're tightening, just sort of pop it, and you can actually get it to turn. But I can tell that one's good. And then we'll do the same thing over here. And again, I can actually see it at this angle here. So again, you want to go loose and then tighten. Come on. See it turning. Come on. See, it wants to go. I can see it turning. I can get in here a little bit. Just help it out. There we go. You can't always do that, but on here I can get in there. There we go. You can hear it pop. Alright, and then just lightly snug. Again, we're not going tight here, we're just lightly snug. Let's do our measurement again. Let's confirm that we're still straight and square. Okay. I'm going to put it 20 this time. 20. And 20. Oh, perfect. All right, we're good. All right, let's just snug these down. Again, try not to, nice and easy. Just for the first tension a bit. All right, back and forth. Just getting a little firmer. Good. I think we're good to go here. All right, nice and snug. And like I said, tight, and then just a little, tiny bit more. Oh, look at that. Look at that. I mean, with tension, you can. It's not even moving. Maybe not even a millimeter if I'm really, not even a millimeter. Maybe half a millimeter if I'm wiggling it. So that's a good sign. All right, and let's just see how this is riding up and down. It's getting there. We're almost there. Nice and smooth. Alright, and literally, I don't feel any jiggling, any movement. Look, it just feels great. I might even be able to back that down just a hair. Just take this tension down just a little bit. I feel like a little. Okay, actually, that's a little smoother. There we go. So, this was just a tiny bit tight. I could feel the tension. But now it's riding nice and smooth. Alright. Boom, I think we're done on that. Let's just confirm again. In case you haven't guessed, I'm a little particular. But I find that you get all this stuff done right, you have so many less issues down the road. And you know, it's not that. That's perfect. Oh man, love it. Alright. Alright, might even be better than it was before. Okay. So, we're square. Now we can actually tighten this part up. We were just loose before, but let's be sure that we're fully snug now. Can be here aligned. I can snug this up. Get that little tight, easy, and then just a little bit more. Look. Okay, so that's tight. Gets snug right there. Just a little bit more. Same with this one. It goes tight right there, and just a little bit. Okay. We're all perfectly flush. Perfect. Alright, so I know that aspect of the x-axis was probably the most difficult thing we're going to work on. It was probably a little frustrating, but we're done, and the rest should get a little easier from here. Okay, so now it gets us to the adjusting of the Z-rod. We're going to work on the Z-axis. Now, these Z-rods from the factory are pretty straight, okay? There may be some minor imperfections, little bows in the rod, from the actual turning and the cutting of the threads. So a minor bow, maybe half a millimeter off, maybe even a quarter millimeter off, really isn't going to be much of a problem if we get everything else perfectly aligned. If you've got a major bow, you may want to look into getting a new rod. You might want to have to order one, call the factory, something like that, or just buy one online or something like that. Okay, so all right. So how can we check to see how the Z-rod is? Well, if you get a super flat surface, a piece of glass, a Formica table, a countertop, something like that, take the Z-rod out, just sort of wipe it off, roll it. If it rolls smoothly, just rolls easy, you're straight. If you get a minor along the way, that's a minor bow, not going to be a problem. If you're seeing that the rod is literally going whoom, 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 it's sort of like oscillating and then speeding up. What it's hitting is, as it's hitting that high spot, as it's rotating, it slows it down, and then when it frees, it's actually almost like speeding up. So you'll see the speeding up, slowing down as it's rolling. Okay, that's a little bit more major bow. Can these rods be straightened? I have had a little success in very carefully diagnosing exactly where the bow is, slightly putting a little pressure, supporting it and putting a little pressure and straightening it out and getting it not perfect, but I can get it better. That's something to consider. Now be careful here, because you could potentially really throw that Z-rod out of alignment if you're maybe bending it over here and the bow is actually over here. It is a little tricky to figure that out without using micrometer and tools and things like that. All right, I would probably just deal with it if it's minor, or get a new rod. Okay, so very important though here, even if you do have that bow, is you want to get everything perfectly aligned. Now, even with a rod that has a slight bow in it, and I'm talking minor, half a millimeter or something like that, if you get everything else aligned, I have not seen Z-banding issues, because everything else is tight, everything else is square. But this is the kind of thing that if everything else is a little off or not adjusted properly, something like this will really throw those other things off, because it's creating inconsistency. And that's what we want this printer to be, consistent mechanically. Okay, so, yes, very important. We have 3 points to this Z-rod. We have the upper part, which is mostly just sitting and not doing much, but it is sort of holding the rod straight. We have the stepper, and then we have the actual carriage, which is going up and down. All right, the important thing here is that we get this perfectly aligned. These Z-rods, when they turn, if we have a bow, what'll happen is this metal actually has sort of a little bit of a memory, and if you turn it and twist it, and it's got this bow, what it'll do is it'll start pushing one of the components off, and it's going to create more tension on the wheels, or it's going to mess up the alignment of the Z-axis or the X-axis, or other parts in the printer, and it'll get you that Z-banding, which is these little stripes going along the print. All right, but if you get everything lined up properly and everything's running smooth, you should be fine, even with a little bit of a bow, because everything else is just so tight and secure. It's not going to affect it. Okay, yeah. So let's do that. A little tricky. Oh, also be sure, really important, be sure that stepper motor on the bottom that's mounted, be sure that's really straight. If that's canted, again, we're going to start creating this arc, almost like a bow and arrow. It's going to create an arc, and we don't want that. We want to be sure that everything is just straight and aligned for consistency. All right, and good luck with this. It's not really difficult for this. It's just a little time consuming. Get your ruler out, test everything, eyeball it if you have to. When you're spinning it, you'll feel when it's smooth and it's straight versus not. Again, and also I'll show you in the video here how if you're adjusted properly, everything's literally just going to fall right into place. I mean, it's literally everything's just going to line up, and even when you go up or down or Z-rod, everything's going to connect up right, and you're good. All right, so have fun with this. All right. So the Z-rod here is what we're going to work on next. There are 3 components to the Z-axis here of alignment. We have the stepper motor. We have the bracket that holds the X-axis. And we have the top plate, which will sit on top, right at the very top. Okay. So these 3 parts all have to be perfectly aligned for this to function and not bind. All right, so what does that mean? All right, this we can move a little. The top plate can slide back and forth, so we can adjust it, but we cannot change, or not much, change the position of this. So what we need to do is we need to verify that this is dead center to this upright here. Now, eyeballing it looks fine. I get it in real close, you can see it once, but it sort of depends on your angle. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this off, and we're going to measure the center from this edge to this edge. Now, this is 40 millimeters wide, so we're looking for, hopefully, right in the center should be 20 millimeters. If it's not, let's just say it's 21 millimeters over this way, then we just need to remember that this needs to go over 1 millimeter. and the top plate will need to just come over 1 millimeter. So we have a perfectly straight alignment. Okay, so again, this alignment, we want to set by this. So whatever this is, we can't change this without changing the wheels and drilling out. I mean, it'd be a nightmare. Okay, so we're setting here. This is 20 millimeters. Great, that's what it should be. Then we just set up the very center post of the stepper to 20. Be set, and then again, the top plate, same thing. All right, so let's measure this. I'm going to take the Z-rod out, and we're going to measure that and be sure we're straight. I think we're pretty close, but let me confirm it. Now, what we need to do is we need to get the Z-rod alignment straight. Okay? So, you can actually eyeball the rod using the inner line here. See the line? There's a line. Alright, so with this straight with my eye, I'm right in the center. I can feel it right in the center of that. Center coming up the middle. Perfect. Alright, so where is the bracket? It's right here. So this bracket goes on the top. We want to try to get that center. Well, guide it in there. Perfect. Okay, I can feel them both spin. You can actually get nice and snug. Alright, again, using my eye, looking straight, I can align. You could also use your ruler, but I do find using it by measuring halfway, I do find that just using my eye works pretty darn well. Alright, so right to the center. Right there, I'm just going to lightly snug this. It's not going to be tight, it's just snug. Alright, I'm lined here, and look, I'm right on top of where I need to be at the bottom too. So that's all looking good. If I needed to, I could loosen this and maybe move it over, and I maybe feeling this, I might need to just go over just a touch. Down here, and it does look like it's not sitting perfectly straight. So just needs to go over just a bump. Just a little snugness. Again, making sure it's nice and square. You want to be sure, again, nice and everything needs to be perfectly straight, parallel or perpendicular, pretty much on these printers. That's feeling really great. All right, now we can do a little test here. We can spin this and go up to the top, and just sort of keep an eye on whether this is still saying aligned. I'm not feeling any really binding. Make sure my lines are all free here. Way out. Yeah, it's feeling great. Now, as you go up, if this was off over here, as you go up, this rod is going to want to tend to bow over this way. And conversely, if this was over on this side, as this is coming up, you'd actually start seeing it wanting to maybe go cant over this way. So as long as that stays pretty much in the center here, we know we've got pretty good alignment. And as I'm rolling up here, there probably is a hint of a bow in the Z-rod. Most of these do have just even at the slightest bow. It shouldn't affect a minor bow, especially if everything else is aligned. Yeah, this is all looking real straight and square. Alright, I think we're ready to hook this puppy down. So let's get this thing off. And let's get connected here. Alright, now what do we do here? Alright, we're here so we can snug this down. Alignment is straight. Let's be sure we're nice in the line. Again, I can see it. Tight. I can actually see through here my T-nuts, that they're nice and set. We're going to now put on the Z coupler. Now the way I like to do this is on this one you'll see that there's little grooves in here. I'm just going to go, most of them have sort of a spiral. Let me see if I can find one of those other style. Might have one around here somewhere. I wanted to jump in here for a moment and just talk a little bit about the title of this video, which is Smash the First Layer Like a Real Pro. Now, although the primary focus of this little video set is getting the consistency and tuning up everything on the machine to get those first layers down, there is a super happy side effect, and that is that you should have much cleaner prints because of it. Because we're taking all the slop out of this machine, out of the 3D printer, we're taking the slop out, so now when you're trying to get a perfect right angle or corner, you're going to have nice corners and not get that little glob on the corners, or that blob. And when you're doing a circle, you're going to get a circle and not something that's just slightly ovaled. So we're taking that slop out, and that should really help in the cleanness of the print. Now, in a future video, we're going to go in and I'm going to help you adjust, go through the process of adjusting the E steps, the X, Y, Z, and the extruder. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start getting accurate prints. So no longer is a 20 millimeter test cube going to be 20.5 millimeters. It should be 20 millimeters to the spec. So this will really help out, especially if you're prototyping a product for yourself, or maybe you're prototyping a product for a customer. When they're giving you certain specs and then you're going to model that with the 3D printer, you're going to make their model, they're going to take that and test fit. It's really accurate that the measurements are accurate, because they may be trying to line up bolt holes, or they might be having clips or tubing connected to it, or who knows what they may be doing. But the important thing here is that you're going to give them a print that they can go and prototype and test on something, and then, because at that point they'll take that, whatever their design is, and they're going to go get a cast made, and that casting process is actually very expensive, and these molds can be 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 or more, depending on the complexity of the mold and how big it is. So yeah, it's really important that we have nice, clean, and accurate prints, and that's what I'm sort of helping you go through. All right, here's one, and this one's actually been over torqued. You can see that there's a big gap there. But generally you want to go a portion, a third, a third, a third, I think is a good rule of thumb on these. You want the one end to go in about a third. You don't want them touching. All right? And of course you've got the side that hooks to the stepper, and you have the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place, this one doesn't have a flat edge that goes in directly, so this one just works on tension. So I'm going to slide that on, and I'm going to go right to, actually there's a stopping point. So right there. Pull if I have the right wrench. Yeah, okay. Okay, just going to, instead of it going down, I'm just going to pull up just a little bit. Alright, and I'm going to go snug, but not super tight right now. Okay, and I can spin this and see, if you put a little wrench in here as a guide, I can spin this, and I'm looking at the metal to see if it's twisting. So I'm watching the gap there. I'm just barely touching, and I'm not feeling it push it out. So my alignment here looks really good. I can actually probably snug this a little more, because I know I'm good there. All right, now I'm looking for my tube. Spinning this around sort of, and you lose everything. There it is. Okay, now mine actually is a spring-loaded. Not here, so I gotta loosen this up here. And I gotta put a little tension there. There we go. All right. By the way, the benefit of that is these T-nuts that they use here. The benefit of the spring-loaded one is it's constantly putting tension on this, and you'll find that it doesn't just, if the Z-axis is up higher, it won't just, with friction, just the weight just won't sort of work its way down. It puts a tension on not just the upper side of the thread or the lower side of the thread, that puts tension on both sides of the thread, tends to make it seem a little firmer and a little tighter and a little more accurate. So that's what the purpose of that. And look at that, look at that. You can see that? It's just, look, just threading that in. It's just going right inside. Like there was no, I'm not having to adjust anything. That's how I know I've got a really great alignment. Look, it literally is just going right into its little spot there. All right, and we want to twist this a little. Okay, let's see, get an accurate measurement here. I'm going to see, I can see a little mark right there. I'm going to screw to about right there. All right, and then I can tighten this one down. Oh man, we're almost done with this. We are looking real good. In fact, this might have actually been better than it was. I actually printed about 650 face shields for my local hospital and fire and rescue that I donated. So all my machines were basically running 24/7 for about a month and a half. All right, so we're looking real good. Now I'm just going to just check this out. We're going to raise it all the way up. And doing this, as this comes up, if this is out of alignment, it's going to want to move. So let's just make sure this is not tight anymore. Just loosen a little. And this is going to literally, as I come up and this pulls closer, it's going to put itself right into alignment. See, it's nice and easy. This feels fantastic. Super smooth. I'll be sure to throw a little grease on here as well. By the way, this part here is the tricky part. From this point on, we're on easy street. It's going to be much simpler and definitely a lot more fun. And you may, if yours is straight, if your z-axis is straight and seems tight, you know, you may just have to tighten up the Ecocentric nuts and just snug a little here, and you can save yourself this whole step. But I do find that these tend to be a little off. So if you want really accurate, straight prints, you know, maybe something that you could sell or, you know, that you're really proud of, this is something worth doing. I know it's a little time consuming, but hopefully I'm taking you through the steps here. So you'll feel that you can do it. It's not difficult, it's just time consuming. All right, look at that, it's just aligning itself. Look, I went all the way up, and that's like right there. So now I can, again, using my fingers as a guide on the bracket back here, going to snug that up. Man, I think we're done here. Okay, boom. And while I'm at it, I'm going to throw a little grease on this as I roll it down. Got a little silicone lube here. Just throw it on there. Doesn't need much, just a little. It's been a while since I've lubed these up. You don't have to run over the whole thing, just in sections. It'll work its way around over time. All right, perfect. By the way, in the future, I'm going to do a video on this workbench I'm working with. It is the best thing in the world, by the way. All right, look at it. It's just, look how gentle that's coming down. Just easy, easy peasy. Yeah, feeling no binding, no twisting. And I'm pretty sure that Z-rod is not perfectly straight. It's pretty rare that they're just absolutely dead on. But if everything else is straight and right, a tiny little bow or twist isn't gonna really mess you up here. All right, sweet action. All right, perfect. Yeah, I said sweet action. All right, good. All right, now let's pop this up. We're all tight here. Let me just go through and just be sure everything is snug. We're not leaving anything out. So I'm going to tighten here. Tighten here. Okay. We know that's all right. That's all snug. Let's tighten. Be sure the stepper motor is all nicely in place here. Yep, nice. Move this bed forward a little bit. Great. All right. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn everything back around so we can start working on the front. We're going to recheck everything for square, and then we get on to the fun stuff. First, let's confirm that everything here is square as it should be. So what we're going to do is get our, most importantly, we're confirming that the height on the x-axis here is the same on both sides. That is probably the most important. We already know that this is straight, and honestly, this framework here should not really go out of square, barring it falling off a table or something like that. And yeah, let's get to that. So, ruler here, drop it in there. It should lay on its own. I'm going to lower this to right at 20, right on the line. Over here on this side. Oh, it's beautiful. Perfectly 20 and 20. Not even a little nudge off. All right, so we're straight. It feels really tight. Look at this. There's like literally, now that this is all tight and secured, look, even raising this up, there's no movement here. This is exactly what we want. All right, at this point we should have the Z-rod nicely aligned, and we can get on to doing the X carriage or X axis extruder. So let me, in the hot end. So let me just talk about this for a second here. A little notation about this. On this Tornado that we were working on here, you probably have already noticed that I had a direct drive system installed on there. I did that a couple years ago, and a year or so ago, and I really, really love it. But for this video, I wanted to sort of show you what going to demonstrate what you probably have. So I actually partially converted it back to the original Bowden setup. So I hooked the Titan extruder up, and I put the original hot end in and the little cover plate and put the fans on there and stuff. Now, I didn't really do all the wiring, and it really shouldn't be a factor for you. So you'll notice in sort of the last video when we were dealing with that Z-Rod, I was able to freely pull off the whole carriage. You will probably be connected at that mounting plate, so you're probably going to need to go ahead and disconnect your stepper and the extruder setup. So mine's is a Titan, so I just undo it, set it aside. It'll let you do everything, and you'll have a little better visibility for pulling the carriage off and the like. So I just want to make that notation. So we've converted over here, and just a little note about the your particular hot end setup there and cover plate. So most of these carriages here have a 3-wheel setup. Now I know that this hot end setup is pretty much the same on the CR10. It's the same on the Ender 3 series. It's the same on my S5, although the actual hot end is a little different. My S Pro is pretty much the same, except it's a little bit bigger cover plate as it's sort of covering over the bed leveling sensor as well. So there's like, I think 2 screws on this one. Maybe there's 3 or maybe there's 4 on yours for the cover plate if you need to get to it. I actually did not need to take that cover plate off to adjust mine, but I do have some Allen keys that are designed to come in at a little bit of an angle, and I was able to sort of step around for that upper right wheel. I was able to sort of come in there and adjust it. But I took the plate off, and I'm going to take this off just so you can sort of see how it may be on your printer. Now, as for the wheels, there should be 3 on your setup. There's 2 fixed, and those are usually the upper wheels are fixed, and you can just tighten those down, snug them up like we've done on the bed and other things like that. And then you'll have the Ecocentric Nut on the bottom. So again, snug it up, and then you're going to adjust that Ecocentric Nut. If you have 4 wheels, you're going to have to do that same procedure on both, and then what I would suggest is you sort of snug it till it's tight, and then back off, see if there's resistance, and do the same on the other side. So you should be able to get those a nice even. And this is a really important factor, and a friend of mine had a printer, and he was getting all kinds of, the bed was, he was adjusting, and he was adjusting it actually properly, and he said he'd get a print or 2 fine, and then it would just keep messing up. And I said, well, maybe it's the bed's loose or something. He said, no. Went over there, and ended up that this was the problem, that his carriage was just slightly, just not super bad, but just a little loose. But if it's tilting the way it sits from with the wheels here and the carriage this way, it actually was doing this. So that little bit of 0.2, 0.3 millimeters change when it was moving back and forth, actually that was affecting the, it would level perfectly, and then after he printed something or 2 and it was sort of bumped around, next time it came, it was actually a little bit raised up. It was actually had tilted back, and so it was doing this. So we want to be sure that we get that nice and secure. It is important for the bed leveling process. Okay, so let's get to that. Now we're going to go in and address and tighten up the X carriage or the hot end assembly. So you'll probably notice here that I originally had a direct drive system on this Tornado, and I've converted it at least partially back to the original Bowden setup with the Titan extruder, the Bowden tube, going into the original hot end, and the cover plate here, which houses the layer fan and the cooling fan. So we need that, and I actually loosened this up a little bit so you can get a demonstration of that. So first thing we want to do is we want to actually raise this up. It'll help us get into a nice and closer and be able to go up underneath here if needed. And we're not going to be hitting the plate. Okay, great. So now your carriage, this is actually, like I said, the Tornado. It's the same as the CR10 series. I believe this is almost exactly the same as the Ender series. My CR10 S5 has the same setup, and my CR10 S Pro has a similar setup, same bracket, but it actually has a bigger cover plate because it actually sort of covers over the bed sensor. So you might have an extra screw or 2 here holding on this sort of cover plate. Okay, so basically the way this works is the same as the bed. You've got some fixed wheels, and you've got a wheel with an Ecocentric nut. Now this particular system has 3 wheels, 2 fixed on the top, and then 1 at the bottom which has the Ecocentric nut. Yours may be reversed, and you may actually have 4 wheels with two fixed and two ecocentric nut. You're just going to have to sort of look at it to tell. But on this one, fixed at the top, the ecocentric nut is at the bottom. Now, this actual assembly is not difficult for me to sort of get in here, and I can actually tighten up the wheels from here because I have one of these Allen keys that are angled. I can get in behind the coupler here, and I can go here, and I can actually come up underneath the bottom here to go ahead and tighten up the wheels. But you may have to remove this plate. So let's go ahead and just do that so you'll at least see what we're going to do here. So this just loosens up. There's on this particular model, we have two of these. Okay, and remember there'll be a wiring loom connected to this. So what I would normally do is just sort of drape it over the back. I'm just going to set it down. Okay, so now we have the hot end assembly, the heat block, and to get in here we're going to need to loosen this up. So we basically will take our wrench. Again, this should all be pretty easy and self-explanatory. So loosen that up, and we're going to go ahead and just take this off. All right, and the same thing, there'll be actual wires coming out of here, and I usually would just sort of drape it off to the side or something of that nature. We'll just go ahead and put it back here for now. Okay, so now we're nice and loose. So the first thing we want to do is we want to snug up the two fixed wheels because they're not going to move. And I'm just going to go around the other side here. And these can actually be relatively tight without breaking anything or stripping. Okay, great. Now, the lower one, yours may actually be reversed. I think I may have switched this around. But, yeah, so the Allen key may be on this side, it may be on this side. I did it this way because I liked the position of it a little better. So, same thing, I'm going to go over here, the Allen key, and we're going to snug this down. And again, we want snug but not overly tightened because we do want to make some adjustments here. So we do want it to move a little bit. All right, so now you can see that's nice. Actually, that tightened it up a little bit right there. But it is still a little loose. Okay, so we're going to take our wrench that came with ours. We're going to pop up here in between the bracket and the wheel, and that's where the ecocentric nut is. And we're going to go ahead and tighten it. Now, I can already feel that tightening up. So we want to snug it up. And right now, it actually feels pretty good. But if I go a little bit more, now I actually feel that braking effect. Actually, I don't know if you can see this. Look, when I push it, see this? Watch how it just thumps. So it almost stops. See that? The little imperfections in the wheel, the little sort of mini dents in the wheel are causing that. That's too tight. So we're going to just back it down just a little bit. Okay? That's tight. It still has a little braking effect. There we go. Now it's loosened up, and we just want to get that happy medium there. Where it's snug. Perfect. Really good. Excellent. And again, nice and snug. Perfect. That's exactly where we want it. And I'm going to go ahead and just tighten this up a little bit. And this may actually go a little tighter here. This may actually snug up just a hair more. And let's see if that's affected it. No, we're perfect. Now, you can also still go in here and just a little adjustment, but that feels great. Okay, now, let's go. We're going to put our heat block back on. And it'd be in our best interest to get this nice and straight. It will definitely make your ironings a little better. And the layers come down just a hair smoother. If this is actually tilted, the actual nozzle itself on the print will actually sort of lay sort of angled filament down. We want it nice and straight so it'll leave nice smooth layers. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm just going to lightly tension this, just lightly, so I can adjust it and move it. Now, for alignment here, because we haven't actually got the bed leveled yet, and there's really not much to connect here, we're going to just align the edge of the block here to the side, the edge. And you can just sort of eyeball this by eye, and I'm looking at here, or you can even take, if you want, you can actually take your ruler, just get in there and measure the millimeters, and we've got, how many millimeters? Okay, go right up to the edge, and that's exactly 5.5 millimeters, and down here, I might just need to turn a little bit. Perfect, I think that's good. Tighten a little more. Let's just double check that that's nice and straight, and I can sort of eyeball it as well. Looking good. At the top portion, 5.5, actually it needs a tiny bit. good. Okay, yeah. All right, so we definitely, like I said, want this straight. Now we're going to snug that down because we don't want it to get bumped or jarred and then effectively moving. That's perfect. And this all feels great. Super. All right, and then again, we're going to have this assembly, which will be wired up, and we're going to come back here. Let's get this preset. And with all the wires here, we're going to go ahead and put our cover plate back on. This is actually a pretty, as far as the parts on and components on the printer, this is actually pretty simple. Especially after we've done all the other Ecocentric nuts, this is a breeze. It's much easier to get to. All right, so I'm just lightly snugged, and then I'm going to go ahead and just sort of straighten it. Be sure we're nice and... It is thin metal, and it does sort of move around, so we want to just get that nice. Snug, not tight. This is really not that structural, so it doesn't matter too much. All right, so that's perfectly set. Now this actual casing here, like I said, it's thin metal, so that moves, but the actual bracket itself is super tight. Okay, so one other thing to note, we're not going to go into the actual Bowden setup here and disassembling that for this process. Generally speaking, if your hot end is flowing, and the easiest way to tell, put your printer on, put it at whatever, if you're doing, you got PLA in the system, you can put it at like 210. If you have like PETG, put it like 240. Heat it up, be sure it's nice and hot. You're going to push the release, the spring release on the extruder, and then you're just going to push the filament through. Now if it just pushes through, you're good, you're not clogging. But here's something to look for, and a good way to tell if maybe you have a partial clog. So when you push through the system, or like actually on this Titan, there's actually a wheel and a gear here, so I can actually just rotate that. You're going to just feed the filament through, let it sort of ooze through. If it's oozing down and sort of straight, or even sort of just waving like this, you're fine, you don't have a clog. If it's coming out of the actual nozzle and it's curving, like curling almost up or curling really hard off to one side, that's usually an indicator you might have a partial clog, and of course that could be a factor for why you're having a poor bed adhesion, or it's not laying down nicely, because you actually got a slight clog in the system. So the best way to deal with that is either just try to push it through or do cold pulls. And I don't want to address that in this video because I think this is getting really long, but I will follow up with an additional video that's coming down the pike. I'm actually going to go through the entire stock system here on actually probably my Pro and maybe this original system, just sort of going through some of the differences and how to go ahead and do that, heating it up and clearing out a clog, or maybe replacing stuff, and how to adjust all the things in the heat block so you're not going to get oozing and you're going to get the best performance out of your particular printer. At this point, we're really getting near the end. We now should have a perfectly adjusted and snugged up X carriage on the X axis. So at this point, the last phase of this video will be adjusting the belts. So we'll get to that. We're going to adjust the belts on the X and Y axis, get everything nice and snugged up, and then we're going to wrap this video up, and we're going to go into, for the next video, the actual leveling of the bed process, and a lot of little techniques and extra little tidbits of information we can do there to sort of help get those really nice first layers. For the last portion of this video, we're going to go and address the belts on this printer. Now there's a couple things to note about the belts here. First of all, we want to be sure the belts are as aligned as possible, and we also want to be sure that the actual gears on the extruder are snugged properly. So let's first address the gears, and let's start there. So first thing, on a stepper, your stepper motor should have a shaft on the actual stepper here, and that's for the gear. You want to be sure that this is snug. Now there's a flat face. So you can see it. So there's the flat edge. Okay, right here. So that's the flat edge on the top there. You want that to line up exactly with the set screw. So get that one in, get it nested where this is aligned perfectly and straight. Snug this one up, and then you'll go to the other side. And then, if there is one on there, yep. So go ahead, and then you want to snug that one down tight as well. You don't want this to skip or pop. But the most important thing is that you have to have that first set screw on the flat spot and snug, because that will keep it from losing its position. So get that nice and secure. Now, a good upgrade for these printers is actually the brace that would go back here to the stepper. Because you can see here, if I twist this, I can actually get a little bit of flex out of this. And that actually, when you're tensioning up that belt really tight, will actually sort of cause that stepper to tilt. And of course, that creates the belt wanting to slam up to one side because you're creating a path of least resistance. That little angle is going to make the belt ride over to that side. Not really a major issue here unless you've really got this belt cranked down. But just to be aware that there is a thing of there's a whole bunch of them actually, of brackets you can put on here, and that'll sort of secure that so that you're not going to get that flexing. Okay, so now let's get into the belt. Tension. Okay, so basically the belt is riding across the front here, and we have the bracket that contains it. Now, this bracket can actually tilt like this, all right? And what that would do, again, same thing, it'll make the belt, if it's turned a little one way, it'll actually cause the belt to drift over this way or to drift back. Now, this one is actually, I think I'm pretty set on this one, and I'll just demonstrate that. When the belt comes back and forth, you can see how it's stepping off to the side. That's the natural just motion of the belt. It's going to float back and forth. What you don't want is you don't want it slammed up to one side of the one side of the pulley or the other. You want it, if it floats in the middle, that's great. If it's lightly nestling up, no problem. But you don't want it turned enough that it is really pushing up on the edge here and almost curling like this over the edge. That would be bad. Okay, so how do we adjust it? So there's 4 screws here, and we'll just sort of loosen those up. And I think that's this one. Okay, we're going to lightly loosen these. Oh, before we get to that, this belt is actually tensioned properly, and you should be able to hear the noise. Hear that tone? So, anyways, let's get to that. This should move as soon as I do this. Okay, and I'm going to come in here with this because I feel like you'll get the sound a little better. All right, so a loose belt. All right, a loose belt would be like this. Sort of easily, you can twist it, you can spin it, and you can twist it like this. This is a loose belt. Makes a little noise when you flick it, but for the most part, it's just sort of bouncing around too much. Okay, what we want to do is if we pull this back, listen now. Hear that? Almost sounds like a strum of a guitar or an instrument. It should be snug. Hear it? It should be snug, but not overly tightened. This should move freely. When this gets too tight, you'll actually feel a lot of resistance because it's actually putting too much force on the stepper motor. So you want it just to slide nicely. Now, how do you adjust this? Okay, relatively simple. All right, so we've got a couple screws here on both sides. Actually, listen to that. Remember I told you I bought this used. I never checked that nut right there. That nut right there is loose. Hear it? Okay, so that's been working on three nuts. Anyways, okay, so one here, and there's 2 over here. We're going to loosen these, and then the way you tighten this is you can actually pull this bracket back or in as you're tightening. And again, you want it nice and straight. So you can actually see the normal motion of this. See the belt? It's sort of riding on the one side. You want to get that nice in the center. So it probably, looking at it from the top here, it probably has a hint of a turn there. So it probably needs to just go over this way a little bit. Okay, so we'll adjust that. So now we basically want to be sure that we're aligned and straight here. So I'll do that. And then we're going to tighten it down. Now I actually tightened this by hand, getting the tension. But we can actually come in here with something soft, maybe the back side of a wrench that's coated in rubber, or even a pen, the back of like a plastic pen. And you can just sort of go in here and just sort of, work this to get it straight and aligned. And then I usually just sort of lightly tension them. And in here you can actually see if you look into the angle here, you can actually see if your nuts are adjusting properly. And this one's actually having a little trouble here. There we go. And I want to get those, of course, to be nice and in the proper position. Okay, let's try that again. Yeah, that's great. But what we could do is come in here and just sort of, if you need to, maybe you're like not angled straight, you're turned. Let's actually let this ride back and forth. So if you watch the belt here, it's not just stuck up on the edge here, it's sort of moving a little bit. I probably could turn it this way just a hair. So what I'll do is I'm just going to take this, and I'm just going to just add a little bit of tension. Maybe loosen that just a little bit more. Just going to add a little bit of, okay, and that should, okay, so now the belt is riding, pretty much traveling back and forth. That's a good indicator that we're nice and aligned. The belt has imperfections in it and will sort of cause it to sort of drift around. But actually now it's not slamming against the side. It touches the side. It comes over to the middle. And if actually this probably could go a little further, it would probably go over to the other side. So this is perfect. Let me snug this set down. And then we'll confirm that the belt is tensioned right before we get to the front ones. Okay, belt to the end. Okay. Perfect. All right, let's get that snug down. You want to be sure that you're tightening these properly. You want to be sure that that nut inside there is twisting. And you can often look in here and actually see as well. Okay, and then just sort of see for movement. The belt is riding in here, nice and easy between the pulleys. Back here, I'm nicely aligned. All right, this is great. And let me just confirm that tension again. Now we gave a little movement. Yeah, little strum. It's not too tight. It's not too loose. It's just right there in that happy medium of that noise. Okay, now this carriage is actually a little more difficult, and we'll go through that. So, okay, so first thing here is I actually misaligned. I deliberately loosened this up so it would be misaligned, and I'm going to show you what I mean here. All right, so in here you'll notice that the belt is actually nesting underneath the cutout and the aluminum extrusion. See that? And it's coming out over here. So this is not aligned. So let's loosen this up, the two screws on here, and we're going to slide it over. We actually want that belt to ride in the center of this, okay? Or at least the center of the grooving here. So there's not much gap there, maybe a millimeter on each side. We want to just try to line that up as the best as possible. So we'll go ahead and do that. All right, so we're going to pop our set screw here. And I can just rotate here. And again, in here, we're looking for that flat spot on the stepper. And it's right there. And actually, yeah, so yeah, right there. I want to just, now you may have to rotate this around. You can sort of just give it a little jiggle here if you're off. And I should be set there. And now I want to push this over, push this in. And see now, I'm gonna try to put it in the center here if I can. I'm just gonna slide the belt onto the tooth here with my fingernail. Carefully sliding. Maybe I can rotate it like this. Okay. Back and forth, putting there. Okay, so now I've got the belt lined up. And you can see, okay, so I've sort of just manipulated the belt to the middle. And you can see we're still how it's hiding, tucking under that groove. We don't want that. We want this to just come over here like this. And see that now we're nicely aligned. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to snug that down. Carefully turn this so I don't upset anything. And we're going to tighten up the one with the flat spot first. So we don't want it to drift. And actually, this needs to just turn a little bit. Right there. And then we'll hit the other side. Okay, now I'll go back and check that out. Yeah, see that's perfect now. It's really sitting right in the middle there, especially if I sort of get this in the middle. Great, okay. That will actually help a big deal in the testing for the strum, because it's actually touching the aluminum. First of all, you're going to slowly fray away as it's grinding back and forth. But the second thing is, you won't get a good strum out of it, because it'll be touching the aluminum. and it'll be just like putting your finger on a guitar string after you've plucked it. It'll muffle it. All right, and we're going to come back over here to the side. And this one on the CR10 series, I don't believe is adjustable. But let me just take a quick little video here. All right, and you can see the belt is coming in here nicely. There. Great, and you can see it's sitting right in the center, so we're good here. And again, this has a little drift that can go back and forth. Now, let's actually work on the tension on this. And basically, we have the two screws here, so we're just going to loosen those. And let me just slide this carriage here. And this one, yeah, let's adjust it. Okay, so again, this would be loose, flopping down. If we pull it a little bit, flopping, loose. All right, so the best thing here is to get these. Looking in here, I can actually see and be sure we get these adjusted properly. Trying to get those screws inside the nuts to turn. Okay, and again, I'm just lightly, just a little bit of pressure on here because I do want to adjust this. And I can, at this point, I should be able to move this back. Okay, and yeah, I can start tensioning now. All right, so let me just give a little more tension. And for this one, you actually probably can put your Allen key in here. Again, you want to ride on the nut here. Do not push this onto the actual pulley because you don't want to put a little dent or an imperfection in it. So we're just going to come in here and just going to give a little bit of a torquing. You see, I don't know if you saw it just sort of pop right there. And now we're sort of at a floppy belt. Not enough still. Let's do a little more. Do the bigger Allen. Okay. Now we're getting there. Okay. A little bit of force there. I'm just going to hold it, and then I'm going to tighten down one of these. And that should be. Actually needs to go just a hair more. Like I said, this belt is a little trickier. Let me get that belt over. What I'm doing, I'm just putting a little, holding the belt and then jiggling it back and forth, and that'll slowly just sort of going like this, and putting a little directionally pushing on the belt, and that'll get it sort of in the center aligned, which is what I'm trying to do here. As you move it a little bit, it'll just naturally move itself. This could go just a hair more. So just hold it. I'm not putting a lot of pressure here. I'm just putting enough to sort of hold it. I'm trying not to scratch up or mar or anything while I'm at it. Okay, I'm aligned. Now let's test it. Yeah, now it's good. All right, now I can snug these down. Actually, do this. Give this carriage just a little bit of movement here. Should move freely and not feel like it's breaking, because that would usually be an indicator that you're putting too much torque on the actual stepper over here on the bearing, the upper bearing. And again, nicely aligned, straight, torque down. All right, and let's confirm that these are all snugged up down here. Okay. Now, if you don't feel like you're right, of course, just repeat. See here? I'm watching the alignment here. The belt is moving back and forth, which means I know I have this alignment proper. I'm actually getting that slight strumming here. So I know that it's not flopping around. We got a perfect tension here. And this carriage here is moving super smooth. And same thing. Getting that little... And like I said, this one hits the... is so close to the aluminum extruder here a little bit more, but you're sort of looking for that same feel in the belt. That little bit, you can twist it, just sort of feel that tension in the twist, and you can sort of feel it, but basically you don't want it flopping, you want it snug, and it pops right into place. And yeah, so that's it. So these belts are done. All right, so that's it. Pretty simple, and really important for the 3D printer process and getting consistency out of your printer. So, awesome. All right, well, congratulations. At this point, you should have a perfectly tuned and adjusted 3D printer all ready to level the bed so you can smash that first layer like a real pro. Now, you'll notice that I've split this video into 2 parts. This first part is all a bit about adjusting and tuning the machine. This is something that you will probably only need to do when the printer is brand new, when you get a second-hand printer, or maybe you're helping someone who's been having some problems. Inevitably, one of the faults in the leveling process is something is misadjusted or not tight, and it's changing the variables, and thus it's printing perfectly fine 1 minute, and the next minute it's not. So this is really important, and this is something you won't have to come back to very often. In fact, the Tornado we were actually using in this video, I bought secondhand. It was probably like 2 years ago. And I've printed thousands of hours, hundreds of prints on that. And I did notice in this video, it was just starting, like the X Carriage was actually starting to get a little sloppier than I would like. And the belts were starting to get just a hint looser, just they sort of stretch over time. So it was getting due for that. And that's been like a year and a half, and like I said, thousands of hours, of probably 100 rolls of print filament on there. So, yeah. And then the next video will be the video strictly on the leveling of the bed. Now, that's something that you may want to come back to a little more often. Maybe you change to a direct drive, you add a glass bed, you change out the springs, you change the pulleys, or you get new belts or something. You may need to come back to that a little more often. Maybe you change to a different filament or slicer. So that is something you'll be able to reference a little easier. And the printer is all square. You just need to worry about the bed, and that will save you having to go through this whole process. You can just go right to the bed leveling process. So hopefully that'll make things a little easier. I do have some really cool stuff coming up on that. Some little techniques that I've used to save time. I almost never level my bed anymore. I'm going to teach you a whole little technique of like adjusting the bed on the fly. Yeah, some really cool things like that. And yeah, and do me a favor, please like and subscribe. I know sometimes we're in a hurry and we forget to do that, but what that does to me, especially with this new channel, is it gives me feedback. Hey, we like what you're doing, or dude, you're wasting our time, get off the air, you're taking our bandwidth up, get out of here. Yeah, hopefully it's not that. I can take criticism. I'd like to hear your feedback on it, positive and negative. Things you liked, I'll try to include more of that in my future videos, and things you didn't like, I'll try to omit that. We can all take a little criticism, a little. So hopefully that's something we can do. And if you've got an idea for a video, or maybe you have a question, I really like to try to help out and answer that. Maybe I'll even make a video out of it. I'm sure you're not going to be the only person that has that question, unless it's something really bizarre. Hopefully that's not the case. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Look forward to watching the next video. I'll hopefully have that posted up really soon here, and to finish this up. So thanks a lot, and be safe out there, everybody.